It is another episode of Take Fountain. I'm here with Thom, and today we have a guy who means a great deal to me. I always say this every time that I have somebody close on the show, but you should know that a lot of things that happen in my career, you have to give credit to where they came from. And early on in my when I was doing The View, I realized that what we needed in the show were the sort of things. Remember how in Carson would have, like, if he wanted to bust things up, he had Rickles on all the time, or he'd have Buddy Hackett, or he'd have Buddy Rich, all those people. Newhart would come in and sit down, and he had material and all this. And I said, we need that sort of thing because day in and day out, this is tough. So probably during my tenure there at The View, over 17 years, this guy you're about to meet was probably on 100 times. Maybe more.
153.
153. Do you actually know the number of times you were on the show?
Yeah, I think maybe now 155 now. Wow.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. Anyway, Mario Cantone is with us. Thank you for doing this. It was early on in a show when you're wondering whether the show's going to make it or not. You need all the help you can get. And Mario would come in and he'd just come through the door and say, "Hello, bitches," and tear the place up. And I thought, oh, what a breath of fresh air this is. Just do whatever. And he had material. He would work out songs. He helped us with anything, commercial integrations, all this other stuff. And we were lucky to have him. And this was before he was a huge star, by the way. Now he's a huge star, and he would never be involved in those sorts of things. Anyway, thanks for being with us.
I just want to say this. I didn't realize this until my email today, that you call this show Take Fountain. And believe me, I know where this comes from.
Exactly. How could you not?
Take Mountain. And for those of you that don't know out there,
right?
Betty Davis was asked, what advice would you give young actresses? And she said, and I'll do it in her later voice, Take Fountain.
Yeah, it was her way of saying F you, basically, to those young actresses, because I'm not going to give you any advice. I'm just going to tell you that Sunset's a little slow at that time of day, and you use Fountain to get to Hollywood.
I completely relate. People, what advice do you have for young comedians? I'm like, don't do it.
Get out. I want to start with a quote I just read. There's some big magazine that has you on the cover, and I can't remember the name. Bella, yeah, it's
Bella
great.
Magazine.
And, and it starts with calling you, or you calling yourself, the laziest man in show business. And I've heard you say this 1,000 times, and it never makes any sense to me. What is it you're trying to say? Because it's not true.
Well, I think at this point it is. Well, it's what we were saying before we went on the air. It's like, now that I've finally I'm a regular on a series, and just like that, and I'm doing well. And there's people that have had this early on in their career, and they have their series, and then of course in their hiatus they have to make a movie. I just thought I'm not going to make a movie on my hiatus. I want to sleep. That's how I feel like I'm the laziest in the show business. And the other thing that is, actually, for you, I did. When I was on The View, Matt and I would write stuff down. We had to for material for, the award show, bust up and whatever else we did, summer blockbuster movies. But mostly for my stand-up, I would always just get up and I'd have the idea, I'd have the character or the impression or whether it was me, and I would just go. I never wrote anything down. And
you mean all those times I saw you were like Caroline's or something? You just arrive on stage?
All in my head. I wasn't riffing. No, it was material I had, but it was all in my head.
Right.
And therefore it was different every time. I would embellish things. Things would come up that weren't there before. And by the time I had to do Laugh Or, my one-man show on Broadway,
which was fantastic,
the way they got the script is we did 2 backers nights in like a year before at the American Airlines Theater, and they taped it. They audio taped it, and they gave it to Magic Fingers, and they typed it out. Then we had a script. I didn't have it written down.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I've seen you do. Do you still do stand up? Do you show up and do?
I do the Cafe Carlisle now.
Oh, of course. Well, you sing,
of course,
and then you tell jokes and sing. It's very. That's a great place for you to do.
It's good. It's small. I hate small clubs.
Do you do that with your husband? Do you do like? Does he play the piano, or
No,
I mean,
he does, but
I know he does.
Actually, his involvement with me for my stand-up and for Laugh Whore, and the new one-man show, if I ever do it, is he writes original music for me. Like he wrote this great Bruce Springsteen number that you never saw. It's really brilliant.
Yeah.
He writes all my original Liza stuff. He's written some funny stuff, and in the Laugh Whore, he wrote like 4 original songs.
He used to write stuff for The View for you.
Yes, he did.
When we needed a bit, he would write a song.
Yeah, when we came on for Valentine's Day and announced we were getting married, he wrote this really funny thing that he played at the piano and I sang. But that's rare that he does that publicly as far as playing for me.
What he has done, Laugh Whore had a lot of different things in it, but and I don't know if this was in Laugh Whore or is just something you did on The View, but you do a thing where Liza and Judy sing to each other.
Yeah, I never did that in Laugh Whore. This came after Laugh Whore.
Really, that wasn't in Laugh Whore? That was just something you did on The View one day?
Yeah, that was it. I did that clip on YouTube is like there's so many views on it.
Yeah.
It's the Christmas thing.
Yes, it's the Christmas thing. I post it every year at Christmas, or usually, if I can find it. You know, and everybody does, because if you haven't seen it, go find it. It will, you won't be able to breathe by the end. You'll be laughing so hard. But
it was fun. It was fun to do that. I mean, I did Liza and Judy in Laugh Whore, but I didn't do them together.
Didn't do them together like that.
In the new show, I'm doing them together. I do them kind of having a duet. But it's that was something I did for The View. That premiered on The View.
Wow. I feel special.
Well, it was great to do original stuff for you guys. And I always loved music. Even when I started doing stand-up, at the Improv in 1984, I mean, Peter Glue, may he rest in peace, played that piano. He was the house pianist. I would come out and open with a number. Like no stand-up comedian did that. I always incorporated music. So by the time Laugh Whore came around, there was more music. And with the Cafe Carlisle, not that there's more music, but there's plenty of it. But the bulk of it is stand-up. And there's only me and Wayne Brady, the only 2 stand-up comedians that come from the club world that play the Cafe Carlisle. And I think the last pure comedian that played there was Mort Saul in like the early 90s.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I love the cachet of the room. It's a very special room. I love the room. It's a great room. I just did it. I just did a week in April and then a few days in June, and it was all sold out. And
I know it always sells out.
It's expensive, that place.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, but people come. I'm like,
how did you 2 meet? What an unlikely combination
I know.
Cafe Society Soigné and Mr. Oklahoma.
Yeah, an guy from Oklahoma.
Well, you know what? It was always the semi-conservative straight man that loved me more than anything else.
Well, I think that's true. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. I think that
True.
I don't know why exactly. I'm not exactly sure why.
I just did the Carlisle, and Friday night I said, "How many gay people are here?" None.
Yeah,
and I was like, "I'm beloved by my people."
Yeah, exactly.
And there was like corporate guys banging their tables, laughing. It was just like, and I would get up at Caroline's. So gay people don't go to comedy stand-up clubs. They'll go to drag shows, they'll go to cabaret shows. But like Caroline's or Gotham or those clubs that I used to headline and sell out, it was like 400 people, and most of them were straight, unless there was some, savvy theater gay folk that would come. But mostly, I would stand up on that stage in like the mid 90s and just look out and go, look what you, I would take that moment once in a great while and go, look at what you're doing. And most of this audience is straight, which is bizarre. And you're just being who you are and doing your thing.
It's a great thing that's happened to this guy. I mean, can you imagine? Look, I've seen you long enough that I remember not even maybe 20 years ago, a performance at Caroline's where there were a bunch of assholes in the front row who were every time you told a joke, they'd do, I mean, they didn't use derogatory words, but they might as well have.
That was my fear every time, you know, and it didn't happen that much at Caroline's. Once in a great while, if they let in a group of guys.
That's what it was. They were drunk, and it was a real frat guy kind of thing. And I remember. Do you remember this night? I don't know. You probably had so many of them.
I did.
Didn't resonate to you.
And it wasn't just them. There was some very conservative Southern women that was sitting in the front row one time that got up and walked out.
Yeah.
And she was like, "We keep our trash." They walking out. She said, "We keep our trash in the garbage, not on stage like here in New York." I was like, "Well, all right."
Fabulous. Listen, Mario, I have to tell you.
Wait, Tom, we met. To answer your question, we met at the View.
You met at the View. Okay.
Joy was doing the Comedy Corner, and I went on there and a few times doing Joy's Comedy Corner, and that's how I met him. And then one day it was like maybe the third time I did it. I happened to go on the night after the Golden Globes, and I was just trashing and going off about the Globes, and it was oh fuck. You know what happens when you're Italian? You tip over your
Love it.
It's like Skelly Winters.
Love it.
So
Yes.
I was the Golden Globes, and you loved that.
I did.
Bill said, let's do the award shows.
Right.
And we started doing award shows after the Globes, after the Grammys, after the daytime Emmys. And not only did you love it, Barbara loved it.
Yeah.
I could do no wrong in her eyes.
Well, I've got to say, and I'm going to give this back to you, Bill, because you have a lot to cover here. But I just want to say, Mario, the notion that this guy, that Bill Getty, cares so much about you and speaks so well of you so often, and I've now known him for about a year and a half, and I've heard your name every week for a year and a half.
Yeah.
So it's the best thing that recommends Bill as a citizen of the 21st century.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes,
I'm
it does.
a modern man.
He was ahead of his time.
But, it's funny with that. What happened was, I'm eventually going to get some of these stupid questions. What happened was that I would heard him do this riff on the Golden Globes or whatever, and I said, if we did that, because the Golden Globes are not as funny and ridiculous as, say, the Grammys.
So the Grammys and the daytime
or the Country Music Awards,
right.
or the daytime Emmys, which are horrible. Right. Just a horrible show. I'm sorry. It just is. Yep. And I said, those things have jokes written in. And I'm also a frustrated comedy writer. I don't know if you realize this. So it gave me a chance to I
think I know
here's
by
a
now.
joke. Here's a joke about, Alan Jackson's song and the country music, and occasionally I'd get a joke in. So we sat and did, I don't know, 5 award shows a year or something. And the good thing about that was that, remember, for 24 hours after an award show, you can use that stuff for free. I mean, the whole thing, the music, the whatever it was. You could use it for free because they wanted to promote the show.
Right.
So it was like, why not, right?
Well, I would rehearse it for the crew. It was terrifying because we would write it the night before. I would come in, and we'd rehearse it for the crew. I loved that crew. They would laugh and let me know. And then you would come down, and you would have the final tweak, and you always added a few brilliant things and cut the right stuff. And you are a comedy writer. You're a comedy showrunner. You should have been.
Should have been. Didn't happen. The next life. All right. Now I'm going to ask you a few things. I'm going to brush through your childhood. Because I think that I do think that one of the things that people find appealing about you is this sort of big Italian family that you come from. The idea that you have it's Massachusetts, right? It's I forgot the town. It's we're
Stoneham, Massachusetts.
Stoneham, Massachusetts.
Everett and then Stoneham.
Stoneham.
And I'm actually in Beverly, Massachusetts right now.
Oh, right now as we speak.
Yeah.
And I assume that it was hard to be an Italian. I always think, and it's a stereotype, I realize, but an Italian male, I think, would, if ever there was a macho sort of stereotype, that would be it.
Yeah.
So what was that like for you to be this person that you are?
I mean, they didn't know it was coming.
Yeah.
They were like, what? But, I was beloved by my cousins and my siblings, and they thought I was very funny. My mother was funny, even though she was a depressed woman. My sisters was very funny, my cousins. So all that humor came from, and they embraced me for the most part. My mother did not love the fact that I was gay. She was not happy about it. She died when I was 21. She had oral cancer, so we never kind of straightened it out. We didn't have arguments, but she scared the shit out of me, and she was very moody. She was a bookie and a compulsive gambler. That's a whole other thing. But she was from Avellino in Italy. her mother and father were. And my father was from Sicily. Now, my father was much more kind of, well, whatever. I never really came out to my mother, even though she knew, and she would say brutal things to me to scare me straight. It was like
what? Like what? What would she say?
Like being gay is worse than being, a drug addict, and it's horrible. And she would say shit like, yeah.
Do you think that she was? I always wonder about this with people. Do you think she was just going like, that's a tough road for you? Like maybe there was something like that. Not just.
Sure, there is that. And she also, my sister's best friend, Harold, who's still in my life, he was gay and he was Jewish, and he would come to dinner every Christmas. And my mother loved him. So I knew she really didn't, deeply feel that way. It was that way of her scaring me straight.
Yeah.
But she also, probably didn't think it was, she probably thought it was disgusting in her heart, I'm sure. Whereas my father, who was a Sicilian guy, was like, nah,
Yeah.
we kind of actually one day, I said to him, thank you for accepting my lifestyle. And he had so many women in his life. It was ridiculous.
Right.
And he said, thank you for accepting mine. And I was like, well, okay.
Right.
So, he didn't, as long as, he was okay. He loved Jerry. He didn't like my ex, but he liked Jerry.
Yeah.
So he just really was okay with it. And when I went to Sicily, that's how they were. They didn't want to see you, having sex in the streets, but they were like, whatever, as long as you don't hurt anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you went to the Naples area and Avellino, where my mother was from, they didn't like it.
So these were cultural differences between different Italians.
And the difference was in my father and my mother. That's what was like the psychological.
I did an interview once. I say I did because of Barbara Walters. We did an interview with Sophia Loren, and she called her Italian, and she says, I'm not Italian. I'm Neapolitan.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, so obviously these areas had their own things.
They do. It's like when, there's a line in Sex and the City early on when where Willie, who was played by Willie, who played Stanford, may he rest in peace.
Right.
He says to me, "Are you Italian?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Oh," I said. He goes, "What are you?" I'm Sicilian. He goes, "Is there a difference?" I'm like, "Yeah." Yeah. So there is that thing.
Did you have the usual sort of bullying and all that stuff that went with it? I mean, you go to school.
I did. Yeah, I did. But I never got hit because I would run or do impressions. You're a very bad boy. You're terrible. You've got a chip on your shoulder. And I would literally get around it. But I remember in sixth grade, I was being followed by Carlton Mason, and he would wait for me after school, and I would wait. I was terrified, and I found my way of kind of getting out of things. In junior high school, it's so funny because some upper grade school and junior high school is when I really got bullied. By the time I went to high school, it all shifted because I wasn't bowing down to their shit. Yeah. I wasn't playing sports. I wasn't going to, you weren't going to pressure me. I was basically an out kid at 13 years old. I didn't announce it on the intercom at school, but I was out to myself and a few people. And this is like 73, 74. Then by the time high school came around, 75, 76, I graduated in 78. I was out, and people knew, and some people didn't like it, but they left me alone. I was protected, really protected by Stephen Jameson, and I remember and John Clark. They were not John Clark. It was John Carroll. They were guys that were like captains of the baseball team and the football team. Stephen was the quarterback. They protected me. They used to bully me in junior high school, but in high school, I remember sitting by Stephen especially, and I just in French class, and I humanized myself by him just getting to know me, and he completely turned anybody that messed with me, and Billy, my friend Billy Blueville, anybody that messed with me. He had a fight at a high school dance because some guy was giving me shit, and he beat him up. That's right, and they were straight men. Yep. That's the story of my life.
I think that is the sort of the history of the gay rights movement in many ways, is that people started out and they didn't know anybody was gay. They did, but they didn't. So and when people started coming out, it's like, oh yeah, I got a cousin who's gay. He's all right. You know what I mean? And don't you think that's what it was? We got to know people.
I'm proof of it. It's the only way it changes it. Even at Emerson College, which I graduated from in the 80s, there was a 60% gay college. And at the time. My sister went to it. There were a lot of gay people in the 60s too. I mean, that were going there. It was kind of known for that. And there was some jocks there, and I was in a fraternity that there was only a few gay guys in it, but one of them actually was gay. Most of them were straight. And there was a couple that were a little like this with me, and they got to know me, and it completely changed their view on gay men. I mean, on gay people. Yeah. So that's how you do it. And that's how you still have to do it, no matter what.
Well, that's why it's important. That's why so many gay people say it's important you tell people that you're gay, because otherwise, they don't realize they like you. I mean,
no question.
Yeah.
Well, the good news about our business is that once you've decided to enter the hell that is entertainment,
right,
the idea of sexual identity is out the window.
Yeah.
If you're not going to work with a diverse population, you're not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guess what, Tom? It came too late.
Yeah. Well, but it is interesting.
Because I remember being in LA and I remember an actor saying to me, I was just in the 80s, don't tell anybody you're gay. You know what it was like back then.
Listen.
You were like a leper. You in front of the camera, but even like agents, like who cares if an agent is gay? I know there's a few agents and producers that are like so gay and they're married. I'm like, come on, man.
I know.
I mean,
please.
It's like, what are you worried about? This has been happening for years and it still happens. But if as an actor, it was like, oh, no, you couldn't do it. I lost so many jobs. I mean, I'm sure there was some jobs I didn't get because of it, but I know for a fact that there was, I remember in 86, I auditioned for, I think his name was Jim McCauley, or was that was the booker for the Tonight Show.
Oh, yeah.
And they gave me a date. He loved me. He was like, I don't know. He came running out of the room at the Improv, and they had videoed it because he wanted the tape. He came out of the room and he was like, I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to put together 6 minutes. You're amazing. His gut was like, we're going to do this. You're amazing. Yeah. And then a week before, he called me and said, I looked at the tape and your act has a gay edge to it. And I think it'll make Johnny nervous. So I think we're going to cancel him. And I had a date, October 28, 1986.
And then you think about the number of gay comedians that appeared on the Carson show who Johnny knew were gay. Of course, we all did.
Yeah, like Charles Nelson Riley wasn't on the Carson show.
Yeah. I know.
Rip Taylor wasn't on the Carson show.
He didn't give it. He was afraid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jim McCauley was afraid, and I think he didn't. I don't know what it was. And you're right. He didn't give me the shot. It made, and I wasn't out in my act, but I certainly wasn't lying about it either. But I just didn't really talk about it at the time.
I don't know if you knew Joel Schumacher or not, but Joel and I were.
I did know Joel. I knew him.
Joel
he was
and I
one of the
were
first people I made.
Very close friends. We met in New York before I moved to California, downtown at what was then called St. Adrian's, which was a bar that was, shall we say, a progressive bar in those days.
Yeah.
In any event, in California, we both started to make a little bit of money, Bill, and it's how I got to know Palm Springs. Mm-hmm. Joel said, we need someplace to go on the weekend. I said, yeah, I need someplace to be able to take a girl. He said, yeah, I need someplace to take a guy.
Right.
So we got together and we bought a house, a cheap little house in Palm Springs. I think we paid $107,000 for it. And we Joel, of course, did his magic, and next thing I know, Angelo Donghia is doing the house.
Yeah, so it's
it's like what?
Little mid-century number in Palm Springs.
All that,
yeah, right.
And then Joel has it from Wednesday to Wednesday, and I have it from Wednesday to Wednesday, and my secretary books us, and people used to, and I got to say, nobody blinked.
Yeah.
And I'm,
Well, now Palm Springs is the gayest place on earth.
Well, I know, but.
Yeah, but it is. But, there's a lot of conservatives and Republicans and homosexuals that live there.
Oh, that's right.
They live in harmony. It's just like.
It is. There is no question about it. Because
unbelievable. I said that the first time I went there. I was like, Palm Springs, this oasis in the desert where Republicans and homosexuals can live in harmony. It's incredible. And so, Tom, you started it.
I hardly started it. I'm going to credit Joel, however, with starting it.
He was a funny man. I went to a couple of dinners with him. He was very funny.
And Joel saved my life. Joel wrote Car Wash for me. He wrote a bunch of things for me in the early days.
Tom, do you know that I love that movie so much? First of all, I met Joel because of my friend Dawn Steinberg, who works at Sony. She's a vice president at Sony Television somewhere. She introduced me to Joe when I first got to LA in 1983. I met with him. He was so nice. And I met him a few times after that, but I remember him and I knew he was like, oh my God, he's a gay director. It was like, to know that was kind of reassuring
Sure.
and nice. But car wash, I worked in the cafeteria in my high school.
Right.
And with Jackie Whitten, who was our cafeteria lady, who was nuts, but I loved her. And we would play that soundtrack, and I would take those trays of like car wash, and we would like go down the aisle.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
I love
listen,
that.
I didn't mean to derail this on car wash.
No,
because
that's
Bill
great.
has
Forget
a lot
it.
of territory
You
to
say car
cover.
wash, I'm like, what? Rolls Royce? It's like the greatest soundtrack
I know.
ever.
I know. It
you,
is.
you said that soundtrack probably made more than the movie, didn't you?
Oh, it did make more than the movie.
Yeah.
Soundtrack saved my ass on that
Yeah.
particular picture because the movie did all right. It did well with a certain kind of middle-class black audience that was tired of Across 125th Street in the Mac, you know.
Well,
and
that was me then, because I went to see it. I went to see it in Stoneham, Massachusetts. I was obsessed with that movie. I could like quote it. I could name the whole cast.
and it worked out really well, and we had a great time making it. And I got to say, Joel wrote a wonderful script, but the thing I loved about it is Joel didn't pull any punches in that script, and so you had a really diverse cast. For the first time, you saw a Rainbow Coalition cast in a movie. Really kind of amazing.
You know, I feel like, and I've been saying this a lot lately, the diversity in movies was much stronger in the 70s and even the late 60s.
Yeah.
It was really happening without people even saying it. It was just happening. And then the 80s came along and AIDS, and it all kind of went back to, you know, a lot of whiteness. And now it's, you know, it's people are making sure that it's diverse, but it's happening because people are being called out for it. In the 70s, people weren't really being called out for it as much, and it was just happening. But yeah, Car Wash was like Antonio Fargas playing the gay guy, and he's got that line where he says, "I am more of a man than you'll ever be."
That's right.
And more of a woman than you'll never have, or something. It's a great line.
It's a great line. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And you put that next to Bill Duke, and you put that next to other wonderful actors in that cast, you know, and it's really
Melanie Mayron.
Yeah, and
Melanie Mayron, that's right.
Yeah, Melanie Mayron, who could fucking act, you know.
Oh, she sure could.
Oh, Melanie Mayron, one of my favorite actors, and Richard Pryor, who comes in the middle
Pryor,
of that
George
thing.
Carlin.
And George Carlin, everybody, you know, Danny DeVito, on and on.
You know,
Who was the guy that owned the car wash, the heavy guy?
Yeah, Sully Boyer.
He was wonderful.
He was wonderful, and I got from Lumet. He was a kind of stock New York Lumet mobster actor.
Wow.
And we dragged him to
Mario
California.
knows movies. If you notice this,
I know my movies.
He knows his
Well,
movies. I
God
want to talk
bless
to you about. I feel like I'm gonna have to do because there's so much about movies. I want to just talk movies. So I'm gonna make you come back another time and just do movies with us because I think that we're.
Oh,
that's.
I'd love that. Are you
Because
kidding?
I see him on Turner Classic Movies, and he just that's a great gig for you. They should just hire you.
Oh, it's
I'll just
the
put it
greatest.
out there in the world. They need to
It's the
hire
most
you.
thrilling.
Yeah,
It's my favorite thing. It's my favorite thing
yeah.
Yeah.
to do.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking. I lived for years in Los Angeles across from a guy named Jack Larson, Jack Larson.
I knew Jack Larson.
Yep. Me too.
Did you?
Yep.
Yes.
Jimmy.
No, I didn't have sex with him, but I knew him.
No, but Jack Larson, for those who don't know, played Jimmy Olsen in the original Superman series in the 50s. And Jack would come over, and he's since passed on, but he lived in a Frank Lloyd Wright house, a one-bedroom home in Brentwood, directly across the street from where we lived. And he would come over, and he would sit down, and you'd say, "Tell us about the old days," you know, or whatever. And he would tell you what it was like, because Jack was gay. He would tell you what it was like to be gay and famous in the 50s.
Right.
With Montgomery Clift and Rock Hudson and Sal Mineo and all these all these different people, and evidently, and I realized I'm a sheltered life, you know, I led. They all got together and talked about it all the time. Like they all like they had certain clubs where they met. They you know that you know the world didn't know it and couldn't know it, but they got together and knew it. And talked about it constantly, and they saw each other. They had certain men in their lives, or whatever it is, and obviously over the course of time, certain people, obviously Elizabeth Taylor's famous for knowing these things, but keeping it under wraps so that everybody could still work. What an amazing thing that we go. I'm about to make a point here. The amazing thing we go from that to last week, or I don't know when it was. Tom Hanks says, if they made Philadelphia again today, I should not play it. It should be played by a gay man. What do you think about that?
Let me tell you what I think about that. He's absolutely right, and I'm so happy he made that statement. But, and I said this on The View the last time I was on, which was the 25th anniversary thing. Look, do I want every gay role played by a gay man? Yes, because the balance of gay roles and straight roles.
Because there aren't that many.
Just completely.
Yeah.
So people are like, well, then gay people shouldn't be able to play straight people. Wrong, because there's a million straight roles. So, and I think gay people and gay actors do play straight roles, and it's fine sometimes. But the Hollywood studio system, I'm not talking an independent movie, I'm to the studio system. They're not going to make a major motion picture about a gay man in the lead or a trans person in the lead without a big star. It's just the way it is with any role. You want someone that's going to put people in those seats. Right. So the fact that Scarlett Johansson movie she was going to make, I think it was a major film. I forget who it was.
Yeah, it was supposed to be an Asian character or something like that. The one you're talking about?
No. She was going to play a trans.
Oh, yes, you're right. Yes.
And they shut it down. And it was a major motion picture. Now, that story will never get told because,
there's nobody like that who can carry that picture.
Not only that, I love Laverne Fox, but she's not going to put as many people in seats as, as Scarlett Johansson. So I just think, if Brokeback Mountain is going to be made by Warner Brothers, it's not going to be two gay actors. Yeah. Maybe one of them, but I just don't think it's going to happen. Or not in my lifetime. I hope I'm wrong, but I do believe that it's like that for any role in any leading role in a major motion picture by a Hollywood studio. They want a movie star. There are no trans movie stars, leading men movie stars. There's none.
Yeah.
So how do you do it?
So here's the deal. Having survived a studio for a long time.
Yeah.
If you make 3 or 4 flops in a row and you're running a studio, and it doesn't matter that you didn't make them or that some other guy in the studio came up with them, whatever the etymology is, the bottom line is your problem. So the bad news stops in your office if you're running a studio. Right. And if you make enough bad movies, 3 or 4, somebody at the board level at a meeting will say to somebody else, these numbers are terrible. What do we do to improve the numbers? And guess what they do? They trade that person, that man or woman, out, gone, done. Get me another one. Because somebody, somewhere, will do a better job. So, the essence of this for me always was, who's best for the part? Who's best for the part? Now, you're right. I need a star.
You need a star.
Because I'm trying to hedge the bet. Not because I'm looking for the very best actor in the world. I mean, listen, no offense, Robert Redford's a lovely guy, but he's not the best actor in the history of man, And so you put Robert Redford in the lead of a movie and you try to augment that with people around him so that Bob does not, and doesn't have to carry it, and all of that.
That's how it's done. That's how the studio system has always done it, and that's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's how it's done. Now, if it's an independent movie, like something like Call Me by Your Name,
right?
At the time, it was an independent movie. It wasn't a studio picture. I don't know who distributed it, but
right.
Did Armie Hammer and Damien, or whatever his name is, Timothée Chalamet, did they actually put that many people in seats at the time? They were both straight and they played gay roles. That's where you take the opportunity and you find at least one.
Yeah, because neither one of them were at that time really stars.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course not.
No, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
right.
that's where it angers me.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm like, look, of course it's, it was a while ago, but of course it's Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger, and they were magnificent.
Yeah.
That movie wasn't going to get made.
No,
you
course.
Don't have 2 gay or even one movie star that is a leading man that is a openly gay man. It just doesn't exist.
Well, the good news about the streaming universe is that places like Netflix have such huge volume and so little dependence on putting people in seats. The game's completely different.
Yeah.
So now you can get away with anything, and you should be able to get away with anything content-wise. And I got to say, the men and women who run streaming services in general come out of old school studios still. They're not, they're all 50. And that's not so good. I'd rather
No, because
see...
they're conditioned the way the studios ran.
Exactly right. They learned the craft. They learned the trade of running these organizations at a time when all those conservative dictums were still in place. And honestly, if I could wave a magic wand, I'd say everyone running a streaming system ought to be 25.
Yeah. It's but then some of the overly wokeness of all of this is just. I want to kill people.
Different issue.
I want to go. You know what? And you were talking about being bullied. Everyone has their bullying stories, and it's an awful thing. But at the same time, I'm here.
Yeah.
I got tough skin. Sometimes you need a little bullying to grow some skin. Everything is so overprotected. This Generation Z is so overprotected that their skin is this thin.
Yeah,
and
that's got to be. Yeah, and every comic is complaining about that. So you must have run into that too. They just don't, and they can't take a joke.
You can't say anything anymore. I mean, this is just ridiculous.
I want to take us off track a little bit here, because one of the things that movies do, to me, is that as I was watching as a kid, they sort of confirmed my sexuality. That is to say, 6-year-old, I go in and I see The Parent Trap, and there's something about Haley Mills that I can't. And I'm like, Mom, can we see The Parent Trap again? Well, no, I want to see The Parent Trap again. And you realize it's that moment in time when you go, you don't say, I'm straight, because that doesn't mean anything when you're 6. But you go like, there's something about that girl. What was that? What is, if you're gay and you're at that age and you're watching, what is it? How does that, you know what I'm asking?
I do. These are good questions. Well, when I was very, very young, I knew when I came out of the womb, but I always say I had a white microphone that had Judy on it, and I sang. But when I was really young, I mean, it was like there was a bunch of them. I mean, it was David Cassidy.
Yeah. Okay.
David Cassidy, Jan Michael Vincent.
Right.
On my wall,
the mechanic and what were Jan Michael Vincent?
And The World's Greatest Athlete, which was a Disney movie.
Oh yes.
But he did a lot of adult movies. But yeah, I mean. He did Hooper with Burt Reynolds.
Right.
Yeah, and you said the mechanic. I saw a movie that he was in recently that I had never seen. He wasn't a good actor either.
No, he had that helicopter movie. He had a movie about helicopters, but I can't remember.
Was it Airwolf? He did
Airwolf.
That series.
That's right. That's it.
And I loved Robert Redford. I had a cover of this screenplay of what was the movie? Big Hoss and Little Falsey.
Yeah. Yes.
With Michael J. Pollard. And or is it J. Michael Pollard?
Michael J. Pollard, that's right.
Yeah, I had that picture of him with the shirt off and a derby of Robert Redford. Dick Gautier was another one in Bye Bye Birdie, the Broadway show. I thought he was beautiful. Yeah, I knew. I could list them. Speaking of Haley Mills, did you ever see Pollyanna?
Oh, of course. Are you kidding me?
Magnificent.
Yeah. Or the Thomasina, or all of these different things.
Oh, yeah. I love the Disney movies.
Oh, sure. Me too. Of course. Go ahead. I'm sorry. You were going to say something.
Just one stupid question. I just wanted to ask: did you actually have to audition for Sex and the City, or did they just warmly embrace you, which they should?
Well, Michael Patrick King, who by the third year of that show kind of got the creative reins,
right,
and was driving it. I knew him from 1983. We were doing stand up together at the Improv. He always loved me. Always would throw me ideas and say, "Okay, Joan Rivers' husband just died and you're on the cruise and she's grieving and Melissa's there with her friends, go." And I would have to improvise. He would do stuff like that. He was nuts. Yeah. But anyway, he wrote me that part. It was just a one-off. And I was in an off-Broadway show at the time, and there was a thing about whether the director was going to let me out to do it or not. I was like, I'm doing it. Yeah. So I auditioned. I went in just as a formality and read it, and I got it. And then they got a lot of great feedback about it, and I came back I only did 1 episode the 3rd season, 2 episodes the 4th season, 3 episodes the 5th season, and 6 episodes the 6th season. So I only did 12 episodes. And then I did both movies, which really cemented it. And now I'm finally a regular on And Just Like That, and it feels great. And I was so happy with this season because the character deepened, and it got better. And because before, I mean, I loved doing them, but it was just these little flashes of gay funny. There was no story with it. And now, and I think next season it's going to be even better. And I got put into Carrie, Sarah Jessica's character's life this year, which is a big deal, and we love working together. And I'm still in, Kristen's life as the character of Kristen Davis plays Charlotte, and Cynthia Nixon, who directed one of the episodes, who directed an off-Broadway show. So that but anyway, the answer is yes, he wrote that for me.
Yeah, it's wonderful because. Go ahead.
And I love Michael. I would go anywhere. Michael Patrick King is, to me, is like this, like Bill Geddy, Michael Patrick King, and Joe Mantello. Those are my three. Yeah. That I would be like, whenever you want, let's go.
That's a great three.
How did I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, but you have to talk to me like I've been on another planet. How did the Willie Garson thing? How was that dealt with this season? How did that shake down in terms of?
Well, nobody knew. I mean, he kept it to himself, and nobody knew except Sarah. And but I didn't know she knew till later. She kind of disclosed that later on because she was, he said, "Don't say anything," and he was. It was a shock. It was sad. It was horrible. It was so weird. And
had you shot everything already?
No, we were block shooting the first 3 episodes.
Okay.
It was our first thing.
Right.
And he told me, I thought he was joking until he turned his head. And then I sat down and I was crying with him, and it was just awful. And, he told, I remember, so, he basically told everybody one by one. And, we thought he could make it through the first 3 episodes, but in the first episode, there's a scene where we're in front of a theater going in to see Charlotte's daughter play her musical recital, and we have an argument in front of Sarah Jessica, and I walk in with
remember that. Yeah.
And then there's an internal scene that was shot 3 weeks later that he couldn't make, and in that morning I got a rewrite from Michael that the scene was now between me and Sarah Jessica, and so it just all shifted, and then that was it. It was, I mean, we were like, you can do this. We all wanted him to kind of, but he was pancreatic cancer. It was horrible. And he had a kid, and he just said, I want to go home.
So I just say one more thing about this idea, and what you've just talked about is an amazing impact, kind of a coming together around his issue and around his death ultimately, and it unites everyone. Having lived through Hollywood at the height of the AIDS epidemic, the same thing happened. Straight people and gay people had to come together and coalesce because there was a monster out there that none of us could figure out how the hell to deal with. And it changed everyone's perception about everything forever. And so the people who lived through that, I mean, I had many, many, many friends who died in that process. And
it was rough. Yeah. It was rough, but it also set back gay rights, 30 years because it was coming. It was in the 70s. It was coming. Oh yeah, we were like gay liberation. It was coming. It just slapped it back 30 years, and that's why it's just now that we're part of the inclusivity and the diversiveness of all of it. It's just kind of the last 5-6 years that it's been happening. That it's been okay again. Then people are like, oh, it's so much better now. It's a little better. But there's still only room for a few of us.
Also, I was thinking about this when I was about talking to you. I thought, you'll be, you'll know it's okay is when no one asks you about being gay. Like we spent half this time talking a little bit about whatever that is. At some point, somebody's just going to talk to you. No. You know what I'm saying, right? Nobody talks with me about being straight.
No, it's true. And like gay comedian, I'm like, I'm not a gay comedian. I'm a comedian who happens to be gay. I've always been a comedian first, and even when I was young and I was doing stand-up and I wasn't out of the closet publicly yet, but I would do Betty Davis on stage and do Julia Child. And it's like, if you didn't know, you were an idiot. I mean, I wasn't doing it in drag, but I was doing impressions of women and some men, but mostly women. And, so if you didn't know, you weren't very perceptive. But either way, some people didn't want to know, especially in those mainstream comedy clubs, which is the ones I did, like the Improv, Catch a Rising Star, Caroline's, the Comedy Cellar. Like those were the ones in the 80s that I did. And I wasn't talking about being gay, but I was not talking about not being gay, but it forced me to really search and stretch for original material that no one else was doing.
Right.
And that was the greatness of it. And even when I finally kind of started talking about it a little bit on stage, it was a little bit here and there. I didn't talk about it a lot. I don't talk about my relationship that much on stage at all. I didn't talk about it. So it was like, I didn't want to be the fat comedian just doing fat jokes, you know?
Sure.
I wanted to be
no
the
question.
comedian first.
Are you gonna do that one-man show? Are you gonna do another one-man show? If you didn't see Mario's one-man show, Laugh Whore, you really missed something. I mean, and I'm like, one-man shows are like, I don't know, they're not usually my thing. You can kind of imagine. I've been to a few where I thought, oh, I have to sit through. This show was so hysterically funny. And it was very successful. I mean, it was a limited run kind of thing, right?
It was limited run, and Showtime produced it. It was the one and only Broadway show they ever actually produced. They had filmed many, but they had never produced it.
Right.
They produced it and they filmed it. They made it a 90-minute special. It was really, got nominated for Tony Award. It was great. Do I want to do another one at this point in my life? I mean, I do, but I know that it's going to be a killer.
Well, that's kind of what I was going at, because what's happening to you is, because you're younger than I am, but not a lot.
No.
And what's happening for you is all of a sudden you're hot. Everybody's like, you're getting calls, you're making deals for season 2 and 3 and 5 or whatever it is of Sex and the City, and I look you up. You're starring in this series and that series as a guest star, and you got some movies coming out and whatever it is, and like, does it irk you that it's now happening, like instead of 40 years ago or 20 years ago?
You kidding me? It's like, now this is happening. I'm exhausted. I just want to sleep. But you know, look, I've actually been just like, okay, you're flying here next week. Okay, you're going there next week. Okay, I've been actually Nashville, LA. I've been flying. I'm just kind of embracing it and doing it. And it's exhausting. I'm tired. But at the same time, I hate the word grateful because everybody uses it.
But you are grateful.
I guess I'm grateful. People are like, oh, you're so lucky, you know, that Sex and the City came back. I'm like, no, I'm not lucky that it came back. I'm lucky that I was involved in it. I'm lucky that I was involved with it in the first place. But the fact that it came back, I don't think they were going to do it without me.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So you're part of the success. That's exactly. You're part of the I agree with that. You know, people are always doing that. You were so lucky and it's like, you know, there is an element of luck. Well, like the first moment is an element of luck. I always say to people like that. The first thing, like, how did you end up in the same room? That was luck. What happened after that was not luck.
And also off track a little bit. These young gay actors and young gay people, period, the Generation Zers that I'm constantly, you know, ranking on, they don't know that you lost jobs because of it. They don't know in the business, in show business. Right. I'm not talking about the world. I mean, it happened in the world too, but I mean, they don't know what it was like in show business. I always say this, you felt like you were a leper. It was really weird and odd. And to climb my way to the middle basically and stay there was a feat.
Yeah,
back
sure.
In the 80s and 90s and even the 2000s. It was a feat. So now, you know, it's different. I mean, you know, it's definitely better, but I still don't think it's great.
Exactly. It's not great. It's better. That's exactly right. Did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Yeah, I have one question that I need to ask Mario.
Okay.
Mom's hilarious.
He does a big. He sets it up,
and then it's like, this is why he ran a studio. Okay, go ahead.
It's the listening part. So, here's what I need from you. I need your well-considered list of your 3 favorite movies of all time.
Oh God, that's so difficult.
I know it is. It's a hell of a question.
Well, okay. I love All About Eve. Right. Because I can't shut it off when it comes on.
Right.
I love The King of Comedy.
Yes. Interesting.
It's a great one.
I love that movie. It's just, you know.
It's a great one.
He's I think it's his best performance. Oh God. Oh Jesus. That's 2, huh?
Well, you like so many movies. That's the problem.
So many. I mean, you know.
I know.
I love. You know, I love.
I've seen you go on about Little Shop of Horrors many times.
I do. Well, for my money, it's I showed that on TCM the great thing about TCM was I did 5 Sundays last October with Ben Mankiewicz, who is my bromance. I love him
he's
so
great.
much. I love him. He's just a good man. And, I always go like this to him. You're a Mankiewicz. Because he is.
Exactly.
You're a Mankiewicz. And it's so funny because he loves movies, but he's a guy. He's such a guy. He's like, he likes gambling and, he's just a guy. He likes sports, probably better than movies. But he loves movies. He comes from his father Frank was Robert Kennedy's press secretary. And I mean, he is such an interesting and just great Uncle Joe and his grandfather Herman. I mean, it's an amazing thing. But I got to pick all those movies that month, 2 every Sunday night. I think we're going to do it again this October. And it was a thrill. I don't even love horror movies. It's not my go-to. They just we want you to do horror. I was like, all right. But I went off the track and I got to do Little Shop of Horrors, the musical, which it is the best. It's the last great movie musical ever made. There's some good ones, but there's the last great.
Yeah, it is great.
Yeah,
Tell me La La Land is good.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. And then Bill, if you could be persuasive with Mario and get him to do another show, we have to devote an entire show to a discussion of Paul Newman and HUD, but I'll put that on hold.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. I love Paul Newman and HUD. I was just talking about, they're doing a thing on TCM this month, revisionist Westerns. And I don't love Westerns, but I loved, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Yeah.
It's one of and it's the 2 of them. It's ridiculous. But then you see him in Sweet Bird of Youth with Geraldine Page, and he's just ridiculously gorgeous.
Yeah.
He really was. But he became a better actor as he got older.
Yeah, he really did.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything. There are 1,000 things I want to talk with you about, but they will take too long.
I didn't say a third movie. Let's just say Pinocchio.
Pinocchio, there it is.
I love classic animation.
I love it too.
I love it. Great choice.
You'll never see that again.
Thank you for doing this, Mario. Or if you're in New York, it's Mario. He's Mario Cantone.
Mario.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. What is that about? I've never understood.
I don't know, but even it's always Mario. They say Mario in New York, and even people that are named Mario they say Mario. Yeah, it's hard, and everywhere else they say Mario. And I grew up in Massachusetts.
Well, you'll always be Mario to me.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you for being with us.
Oklahoma. That's the way
exactly right. That's the way we say it in Oklahoma. There's so many Marios in Oklahoma.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mario. There are no shortcuts in Hollywood. Remember that. But there are many, many detours. This is Bill Getty with Thom Mount, advising you to
take Fountain.
Yay.
No, I'll come back and do a whole.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you so much.